Emmett O'Sullivan. Well, you are going to be my 561st guest on my show, and as such, will be the youngest ever on my show. I have had a 19-year-old, so you're not the only teenager, but it's great to have you on the show. I reached out once I heard about through your mum, the marvelous Margaret Malloy, about your initiative, your project. And so let's start with, in your own words, Emmett, as I like to always ask, who who is Emmett O'Sullivan?
Yeah, so my name's Emmett O'Sullivan. I'm 17 years old. I'm in the 11th grade, growing up in New York City. I go to Regis High School in Manhattan. And yeah, I just recently published a book about sort of modeling my story living with type 1 diabetes, which I was diagnosed with in May of 2020. And yeah, and I just really like to tell my story through the lens of a dinosaur. And I'll get to the actual book later, but yeah, so growing up in New York City, a lot of things to do here, of course. Love playing sports with my friends. I'm a member of the debate team at my school, write for the school's newspaper. So I have definitely a lot of different interests. And I guess Drew Discovers Diabetes, which is the book, is just one of my recent sort of ventures, I guess.
It's fantastic. You are evidently a very active, ambitious young man. And that is no surprise to me. So let's start going back to this diagnosis. What I understand from you was that it took a while for you to figure it out. So tell us what happened in the, let's assume, the weeks before you got diagnosed.
Yeah, so as I said, I was diagnosed in May of 2020, and during that time, it was pretty much just like the COVID craze. So, and I have no family
Right.
history of type 1 diabetes. So I felt very tired. I was going to the bathroom a lot, very weak. And during the whole time I was in online school, it was my eighth grade year or my seventh grade year. And it was online school. And I would find myself just so tired during these online days. And when I would think about it, I would just attribute it to like, oh, it's COVID. Everyone's tired online. We're not getting active. So when it got to the point where it must have been actually maybe months of me sort of the symptoms getting worse and worse. It got to the point where I was sleeping almost all day. Um, and I asked my mom about it, and we had no family history. So during the time, everyone, so when they saw someone who was sick, just thought like, oh, you have COVID, even though the symptoms didn't really match up with it at all. People just attributed to it because that was sort of like the whole craze at the time.
Mm.
So yeah, and then I started Googling the symptoms myself. And I was like, I told my parents, like, I have type 1 diabetes. And I almost like diagnosed myself there. And my parents were like, what are you talking? What are you talking about? So we called my pediatrician and then she agreed with me. So we went to the emergency room and they saw me at the time. I was super, super skinny. I had lost like a lot of weight and I had no idea that I even lost so much weight. I was down like I think I was down like 10 pounds in the last like probably month. And I was super skinny, so they thought instantly I had type 1 diabetes, which is the genetic kind, and it shows more like the skinniness than the other type of diabetes. But then they tested my like urine and my blood sugar, and my blood sugar level was about 596, and the normal level is about 70 to 120. So I was my blood sugar was super, super high. And I had no idea the whole time. They rushed me to the hospital, uh, administered a lot of insulin. It was definitely a lot to go through, but yeah. And then ever since then, I guess I've learned from it. It's probably been my biggest obstacle I've had in my life so far, but I've definitely grown a lot from it.
Well, that makes total sense. So let's level things out, the playing field, since I too am a type 1 diabetic. And I too had a similar type of journey where I had more pounds to lose possibly than you, but I lost probably 15 pounds in 3 weeks, where it was very visible for me because I kept on having to change my belt,
Ah,
where the holes for my belt, because I was like kept on. Then my trousers began to be much too large for me, then there's always the notion, as I had it, of uh, feeling very thirsty and needing to urinate all the time. And so those are the three factors that I had. And I was wondering if there was any difference about that sort of diagnosis when you are 13 versus 40 years old, as I was.
I would say I think the symptoms are definitely the same thing, but the number one thing is like as a 13-year-old, I was super, super active. So I think that that exhaustion was almost like multiplied because the base level I was at was super active, going playing sports with my friends like every day. And then it went from like 100% activity to like very, very minimal activity. So I think while I had the same symptom of exhaustion, it was just it seemed a lot bigger because I was so active when I was that age, and I got to the point where I was sleeping all day, and I couldn't really like even walk around my house as much as I used to be able to.
Well, it feels for me that the particularity uh, on top of everything else was that it was COVID.
Mhm.
So you don't have the same type of activities in general. You're sitting on a desk in front of a computer all day long, and that for some is extremely fatiguing and non-energizing. So that must have been a very hard experience for you and your family.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's part of the reason why I don't think I realized it for a very long time because it's not even like I was going outside and I felt tired when I was playing sports. I wasn't even playing the sports in the first place because I was inside for hours or maybe even days just looking at a screen all day because I had all my school was via Zoom. Um and it would just like I remember my friends and I we pretty much what we would do is we would just play video games with each other because that was really the only way to communicate and like have fun because we can't play sports like we used to be able to. And
Mm.
then I mean it's hard to know that you're always feeling tired when you're pretty much forced to be in a chair all day. So that definitely exacerbated things.
Right. So you talk about in your book, we'll get into the book in a while, but you talk about at the very beginning, the sort of a preface about how you have been helped by having a community of support. I was wondering, what did that look like?
Yeah, so I mean the first thing is when I was diagnosed, um, I remember I think the first thing is when I was first diagnosed, I got a lot of like support instantly. So I remember the doctor's office brought in like a nutritionist, or the hospital brought in like a nutritionist, like a social worker. And at the time, I kind of brushed them off because I was just dealing with a lot of things. So I didn't really want to talk a lot about that, but I was definitely offered a lot of support. And then definitely from my family and friends. I remember my friends asking so many questions about it, and they were like so intrigued by it because at my school, I have no one with the condition. And I really don't have anyone my age that I know with type 1 diabetes. So it definitely made me unique in a way. And people were definitely very accepting of it, very, very interested in it, and treated me the same as always, as you'd expect. So I think just my family, friends, and even like the hospital care has been great support.
I want to just talk about one element of the treatment because you have the insulin, the long acting and the fast acting, presumably. You been offered pumps and little Dexcoms or other ways to measure your glycemic levels?
Definitely. So right now I don't use a pump or a continuous glucose monitor, which is pretty unique. I like do it like the old-fashioned way almost. So I use an insulin pen, just inject myself probably around 4 times a day, 4 to 5 times a day. One at night, I give myself my long-acting insulin at 11 p.m. every night, and my short-term insulin before every meal. And yeah, so that's how I administer insulin. And then for testing my blood sugar, there's a lot of technology recently. Whenever I go to my endocrinologist, they are always like advertising the newest product, and I'm like, oh, it looks cool, but I mean things are going well, so I just test my blood sugar. I prick my finger multiple times a day and see how my blood sugar levels are at. And so far, I've been good at managing it, so I haven't felt the need to switch over. And I think another aspect of that was I didn't want to have something attached to my body, especially when I was playing sports, like during the basketball season, especially. So that is definitely another reason why I wanted to have like the freedom of not having something attached to me. But whenever I say that to the doctors, they're like, "Oh, you should." They're kind of concerned a little bit, but things been going well. My blood sugar, A1C levels have been great. So they're pretty much like, and I'm like as well. Like if it's working, there's no need to fix it. So yeah.
And just to substantiate a piece you said earlier, you were talking in milligrams. Over here, we talk in mmols, which is
Okay.
I've had to learn how to do both, what is good. And you talked about 500 level in milligrams, knowing that a healthy person is typically between 80 and 120 milligrams. And so, yeah, off the charts high.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I do get the same type. I had the same type of propositions from doctors. Sometimes I look at them a little bit, so let's say suspectly, thinking that it's more about promotion of getting you into some kind of campaign or test or whatever. The thing that I've done, and I wonder how this resonates for you, Emmett. You said it works, so don't fix. It's not broken. I have had this, and I resisted all technology. So I'm still with the insulin pens, and only recently changed to a continuous glucose monitor. But I had this idea. I want to stay responsible for my insulin. It felt like if you delegate the insulin, well, of course, the pump doesn't exactly do everything. You still have to tell it what to do, but it was like a de-responsibilization with regard to managing it. And I was wondering what you would think of that.
Mhm. Yeah, so with my diagnosis, I'm super, super independent. I administer everything myself. I test my own blood sugars. I've been like that since I was 13 when I was diagnosed. I never really like I know of some kids who like go to the nurse office during the day when they're giving themselves insulin. I'm not really like that at the lunch table. I'll just like take my insulin pen and do it in front of all my friends, like with no shame. So that's how that's worked. And then in terms of like the pump and the responsibility thing, I definitely agree with you. I think in a way, like while you might think you have like I guess the pump is more like you can trust it more, it's gonna be more accurate. In a way, I feel like I would have more control with the pens because I would feel like I'm more connected to what I'm putting into my body. I'm doing everything myself, in a way. But I can't really speak on the pump because I haven't really tried that yet. So, but I mean, so far I really like how things been going with doing pretty much everything like manually.
Yeah, philosophically, it sounds like you just don't need the pump.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, I was preparing for our interview, and we're going to get the book next. But as I was preparing, I was thinking, you write in the preface that millions of people. I was like, oh, millions. I wonder how many millions. So I started looking at that. It turns out that there are, according to the NIH, the National Institute of Health, in 2021, there were 18% of the 8.4 million people around the world are under 20 years old, and 19%, 1.6 million, are 60 and older. So you and I are both ends of the spectrum, and we're the same number of folks, ironically. Although they said in 2021 there were another 500,000 new cases diagnosed. So it seems like that's a large number and maybe on the rise. Do you have any feeling about whether it's on the increase type 1? I mean, they talk a lot more about type 2, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if I were to think about it not from a scientific perspective, for me personally, I wouldn't see it on the rise because I really have not encountered many people at all with type 1. But I have heard that actually like people like I don't remember the exact genetic history, but I've heard that like genetically it's been like on the rise. But I'm not sure the actual scientific details. But I definitely think a lot of like as you said, they emphasize type 2 being on the rise a lot because of like diet and other things that could influence type 2 diabetes. But I can't really speak a lot on the rise of actual type 1. But one thing I am interested in is I've looked at some like the progress in terms of a cure for the condition, which I actually do find promising. I do find hope that sometime in my lifetime there's going to be some sort of cure. So that's something I am interested in, and I look into.
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed is that you were giving the proceeds from the book to research to cure it. I have actually not really put my nose in that. So do you have a specific charity you're donating to, or how is that working?
Yeah, so all the proceeds from the book are going to the Diabetes Research Institute Foundation, and the money is going completely into research. So it's not going into like awareness or advocacy, which of course is important. It's going straight into the research of the condition, which is something I guess like very interested in myself because what I'm thinking is at least the book itself does a lot of the advocacy when while the proceeds will do some of the research. So in a way, I'm getting both the best of both worlds. So that's kind of how I viewed that.
Super. Now, let's get into your Drew and the what was it, the Dinotopia, the Dinotopia. So start with talking about how you went about the idea of writing the book, and then the method that you used to write it and draw it.
Yeah, definitely. So I've always wanted to write a children's book. I always found that sort of like a goal I've had since I was a lot younger, but I never really had like anything unique to write it about in a way.
Mm.
So when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I guess that was like the new thing I could write a children's book about. And instantly, like I did definitely had to get used to the condition for the first couple years. And then I found that this summer I was like pretty well accustomed to the condition. I had a lot of experience. I went through the ups and downs of the condition. So I felt that now like was the time to write the book. So in terms of thinking about it, I've always loved dinosaurs. I have like in my room in my home, I have like the wallpaper is all dinosaurs still, and I've complained to my mom about that. But I see the reason. I guess I like part of me likes it as well. But I have a lot of dinosaurs in my room and things like that. So in terms of the book, so first on writing it, I'll talk about the illustration right after. So for writing the book, I kind of wanted to mirror my diagnosis in a way. So in the book, what's happening is this dinosaur called Drew is playing outside with their friends. They're playing Leafy Chase, which is like the sport that all the dinosaurs are playing, kind of like how I used to, or like I still do, love playing sports. And then Drew starts feeling tired and going to the bathroom and dizzy and all the symptoms that I felt, and it's the among the common symptoms of type 1 diabetes. And then kind of like the dinosaur, I myself, who I went to my parents, the dinosaur goes to their mom and starts asking about it. And the mom's like, you need to eat some more fruits for energy. And with diabetes, that's not really what's the best solution, because fruits have some natural sugar, so that's gonna spike your blood sugar levels. And
Fructose.
then, yes, and then so the dinosaur then goes to the doctor's office. The dino doc sort of treats him very well, very welcoming doctor, gives him support, gives him the tools he needs, and then, in long story short, he goes back out of Dinotopia. Dinotopia is a great community with a lot of support. He goes back to playing Leafy Chase with Drew's friends, and Drew's mom tells about all the different celebrities, the astronauts with type 1 diabetes and the Olympians with type 1 diabetes, which is something I found cool when I was diagnosed, like a lot of celebrities with the condition. And Drew goes out and he lives a great life, and Drew's very unique.
Why the name Drew?
So yeah, so the first reason I'd say is because the book's called Drew Discovers Diabetes. I guess the alliteration with the D is definitely something I found cool, and I found it to be, I guess, like it rolls off the tongue well. And I'd say also Drew is, I aimed it to be like a pretty gender neutral name. I've met both like people like guys named Drew, girls named Drew, and I wanted to make sure there's no like pronouns in the book or anything. I don't like use he or she, so anyone can really pick up the book and identify themselves with it, whether they're whatever gender they are. That was definitely a priority I had when writing the book, making it super inclusive so that, like, even though like I guess dinosaurs might skew to like a more, I guess, male friendly type of book, they can still like any female can see themselves with the book. And I originally had the color of the dinosaur blue, because I think like blue is like the color of diabetes, like it's like the national color of diabetes or something like that. But I wanted to change that because blue is typically associated with like masculinity. So I changed the color of the dinosaur to orange, and I'll get to the illustration in a second. But to make things, I guess, all the more inclusive. So that was another reason why I made Drew and their color.
We'll get to the drawings in a moment, but in terms of the celebrities, are there any celebrities that stand out for you as to being inspirational?
Hmm. Um. So yeah. So I know Nick Jonas. is a musician and he has the condition. And I always see like there's like an NHL player with the condition now. Like pretty much all sports are gonna have some people, I guess like American sports, at least what I've paid attention to, people in the sports with the condition. So like I've always seen like I remember seeing on TV, or it was during the Super Bowl. There in the Super Bowl there was a player, and one of my friends told me like, oh, like he has type 1 diabetes, and I was like, and I started like rooting for him during the game. I don't remember his name, but that was definitely
Mm.
cool. So I mean like I've definitely looked. I always see it like, oh, this guy's type 1 diabetes, and I always find that pretty like inspiring, especially like athletes, because I think a misconception with the condition is you can't like play as many sports as one without the condition can. So I definitely find that inspiring.
Well, I practice a sport called paddle tennis. In America, they call it padel.
No, yeah, I know.
That's the racket in the back there, and it can be quite uh, vigorous, invigorating, and so you definitely need to be aware of your sugars as I do it. And one of the pros on the male side is a guy called Alejandro Ruiz, Ali Ruiz, and he's a type 1 diabetic. He's a left-hander, and he's maybe 10th in the world. So you can definitely do stuff with it, and yet the one thing that I think is I mean you can do it, but you do need to be careful. You do need it. It does take. It's not just like the same thing. You have to be attentive to where you are and how much effort you're going to be putting in, and what time of the day. I don't know about you, but for me, if I get up at say 6 o'clock in the morning and I go and my levels, I put it in the milligrams. If I were at 120 at 6 in the morning and I go and play 2 hours of paddle, for example, before work, my sugars, despite a heavy workout, could be at 160 at the end of the match, right? Which is it's very peculiar because in other words, my body is producing more sugars, which is secreted from the muscles that are working hard and the stresses, and I will end up with a higher sugar in the morning because my body's insulin resistant in the morning. However, if I were to do the match at 6 p.m. and I were at 120, I would need to eat
Hmm.
at least 60 grams of carbs, maybe 100 even, in order to deal with the next levels of activity. I was wondering what your ratios are in that capacity.
Yeah, I honestly haven't noticed a big difference between like more working out in the morning or at night, but I remember before basketball games last year, I would always my go-to thing was a granola bar. I would choose to eat like a granola bar because I used to have orange juice. So orange juice is like a fast-acting sugar and it'll spike your blood sugar up. But what I found was not as beneficial with that. It's not going to hold for a long time throughout the game. So I'd have a granola bar and then I would sometimes have like on the bench have like apple juice or like a Gatorade to have that like that quick blood sugar in case I need it, but to make sure I eat that granola bar to hold me through the game. So like as you said, definitely you made a good point where it's not the same. You can't just like start playing sports the exact way you used to be able to, but just be more attentive. You can sort of pay more attention to what you're eating, how active you're being, to be more in touch with your body. And that's something definitely I had to manage, but granola bars and orange juice or Gatorade or apple juice. That's how I got through my athletics.
That's brilliant. All right, I want you to talk us through these illustrations because you didn't actually attribute them to you in the book as I read it. So I was like, I wonder who the artist is. Tell us about the illustrations because they are obviously a very important part of the book.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the coolest part of the books when you open even the title is such a fantastic image and all the pages look so colorful, so vibrant. So I myself I'm not the best artist in terms of like making my own art. And so over the summer I found out with like the craze in AI, there's this platform called Midjourney. And I had to figure out a lot about Midjourney with like prompting. So basically you write a prompt into Midjourney and it shoots out a couple images that match the prompt. So I would do a lot of stuff like describe it, like I had to test that a lot and get used to the platform, but like in the style of this artist or like in a children's book style, like draw a lush forest and with greenery and have to use a lot of these descriptors that would finally get the image I wanted. So it took a lot of attempts and a lot of learning how to use Midjourney. So that's how I use the background images. And I did some editings in Canva, which is how I guess like put together the book, where I like added some filters or brightened up some areas or added some external images and stuff like that. And then for the characters, I would do something similar. I would generate like a dinosaur, cute, like have these like descriptors, cute, like adorable. I would even repeat like very like synonyms to like really emphasize that point. And like I had to do that a lot to get the characters, but it was definitely I think people might think it's like easier than it is though, because it did take some time to learn the platform and get used to the prompts. Because I remember sometimes I would put in prompts and get completely wrong, completely like weird, sort of creepy images when I asked for these dinosaurs, and then sometimes they would get like hyper realistic with like large teeth and like crazy scales, and I could never put that in a children's book. So that was something I had to get used to. But yeah, so using digital art through AI, which I think is going to be a big thing in the future with children's book because of how cool these images look. That's how I illustrated the book.
So in using Midjourney, it was very iterative, I'm sure, and you had to learn all the different words that to get to what you wanted. Did you find that somehow Midjourney had a character itself, its own personality as you were interacting with it?
Oh, that's definitely interesting. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, one thing is I would sometimes like one thing I noticed that you can't really generate like text. Like I tried generating like a word, and then it started like repeating the word in the image. The word was all over, spelled wrong, and things like that. So I didn't really like. I was thinking about generating like the dinosaur, and then above it like cool characters saying Drew, but that didn't work out. So I mean, I'm not sure about it. That's definitely an interesting question. I definitely did notice like some similarities, like as I said with the words, but I'm not sure about an exact like character that Midjourney embodies.
Well, it just sounded like you had an experience with Midjourney, it might have been more just a question of the types of expletives you said. Oh, bonkers! This isn't what I'm looking for. Maybe that was sort of the emotions that it procured in you in you creating it. So you create Drew and the other characters. Was it able to easily remember the Drew that you wanted? Because you obviously had to have some similarities, and was it good at adapting Drew from one image to the other?
Yeah, so that was a big roadblock I hit during my illustrations, and it did send me back a little bit, and it was frustrating. So Midjourney right now is it can't remember the dinosaur. So what I mean by that is if you generate an image of Drew, and I'm sure this will change and how fast is developing very, very soon. But if you generate an image of Drew and then the next prompt, you can't be like, okay, but make him sad. You can't do that, actually. You can't edit the image you had previously. So in the book, a lot of the, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but Drew is very happy during a lot of like a lot of the pages, which is, I guess, like a positive notion on getting diagnosed with a condition. But that's something I had difficulty with. Is it's hard, or it's honestly impossible right now to change the expressions of characters when doing AI illustration. Because if you said make an orange dinosaur with a smiley face, and then this is of course a very simplified version of it, and then the next prompt you said make an orange dinosaur with a sad face, the difference is not going to be the sad face and the happy face. It could also change the scales and the feet and everything about it, because you can put in the same prompt twice. It's going to give you different things every single time. So it's hard to be consistent with the characters. But I could see that changing in the future. I remember spending so long trying to figure that out. But I never got the exact answer to that.
I asked the question because I can relate. Do you to what was what you used the premium version of Midjourney, or was it
Yeah,
free?
so it was so I could there's a free there's like some free websites called like DALL-E, but you only have a certain number of credits and you run out. And the number of generations I was doing was so many just to even get one image, just learning the process, as you said, a very iterative process. So I'm not sure the exact pricing, but I think I got like a monthly pass, whatever the option was on Midjourney. And I still have it, even though I started it in the summer and I finished illustrating the book just to play around with because I find it so cool and so fun. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it was like the monthly pass.
It's true that once you get used to it and you start figuring out how to do those queries in a better way, you're quicker to get to the end result. It's a lot more efficient that way. And so I too have my own. I keep on up, keep up with them. One of the things that you talked about, or you write about, certainly with Drew, is the idea of allowing or encouraging those who do get it to feel empowered to take care of their health. You also talk about building resilience or having the resilience to deal with it. What do you mean by that?
So, I mean, when I at least I'll first talk about like my experience getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. As you would when you get diagnosed with a life-changing condition like that, you are going to feel down, and you're going to think that you can't do as many of the things that you used to be able to. For example, like if I want to like if we're in an intense moment in a basketball match, it's possible that have to sit out for a second to catch up with my sugars and get my sugars up. That's just an example of the many things. One thing interesting I've read is people with type 1 diabetes make 180 extra decisions every day than someone without the condition. So I mean, like constantly throughout the day, it's on your mind. You're going to be have to making decisions with not only like your blood sugar levels, the food you eat, but everything, sleep, stress, like everything can impact your blood sugar level. So it's constantly throughout your mind. So since it's such, you have to be it is a difficult disease to live with because you have to pay so much attention to it and take good care to be healthy. So in terms of resilience, that is definitely a hard thing to manage when you go from living like what people would consider a normal life to having a life-changing condition. It's completely your life is going to completely change. And I mean, for me, how I guess I would consider resilience myself is I think resilience was really only accessed through me with other people because it's hard to be resilient if you're isolated. That's something I definitely found when I was diagnosed with a condition. So I think resilience and a lot of the resilience I emphasize in the book is not like Drew. Because I don't think that's realistic. I don't think people when they're reading the book can identify with someone just getting the condition and the next day them being completely fine and happy. I don't think that's realistic. I think it's more realistic, and what I emphasize in the book is Drew gets diagnosed. Drew's very confused, but the family comes together. The doctors come together, and with the support of an entire community, that's how the dinosaur is resilient. It's not just themselves. So, I mean, in terms of myself, I would not change a thing. I'm happy I was diagnosed because of the way it's completely changed my perspective on life, made me much more responsible, made me much more independent, made me much more in tune with my health and my body. And I think those 180 decisions I've made every single day have made me a better decision maker. So I think that it's been helpful to me. Honestly, it's made me unique, and I'm happy if how resilient I was, and I still am resilient to this day. Where I go through ups and downs, not just my blood sugar, but just in my life. So yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most important things I emphasize in the book.
May I say that is the most beautiful expression? It's absolutely delightful. And I've never heard this 180 decisions per day. So I'm now thinking of myself as reinforced my decision making abilities thanks to you. That's really cool, Emma. And so this book is designed to bring awareness. The challenge at some level, Drew Emmett, is that people who get it, that's when you learn about it. It's sort of the challenge is getting it out to the rest of the world. So most of the people who are listening to this, hopefully, this is new news. This is like, what is, oh, it's not the same as type 2. And, there's usual confusion around that. So hopefully right now, we're helping to spread it. But how are you trying to get the word out to people and helping them to understand the symptoms? Because if you don't see the symptoms, as in 2021, I saw that there are 35,000 people that died because they were non-diagnosed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there's two big motivations with the book. One is to show people with the condition that they can be empowered, they should feel resilient, and they can see a dinosaur overcoming and struggling, but succeeding in the battle of type 1 diabetes. But I think the second motivation is exactly what you said, like showing people what the symptoms are, having it more normalized, people understanding what type 1 diabetes was. Because for me, I didn't know about the condition. I didn't know the symptoms were type 1 diabetes. No one really knows that unless you have family members with it. And a lot of the people who are diagnosed, even though it's a genetic disease, won't have a lot of family history with it. And that's just the reality. So as you said, so many people die with the condition and they don't even know they have it. So for me, what I did to address that is the first thing is it's an ebook. So I set it as the minimum price, which was $1.99. I think it's €1.70. And it's available globally, all Amazon marketplaces. You can buy the ebook with, like, I think the Amazon says buy now with one click. So it's super, I'm trying to make it super, super accessible. And I plan on dropping the hard copy very soon. And on March 26th, this is going to be before this episode gets posted, but that's Diabetes Alert Day. And that's the day where I'm going to start advertising it to the US, reaching out to friends and family to buy it. And that's going to be the big day where I want to sort of spread awareness, because that's Diabetes Alert Day. It's about awareness for the condition. And I think an important part of this book is it's not just for families who have the condition, but it's just a children's book. You can treat it as a children's book like any other children's book. It just happens to be about a disability. So, I mean, I think it'd be really cool if, like, kids in school without the condition could read the book like it was a normal children's book, and it just became a norm to know about the condition, to know about the symptoms, so you could catch it before it's too late, which unfortunately is not always the case. And for me, I caught it super late, and to be completely honest, I was in a near death sort of blood sugar experience, and that's what the doctors told me. So that's, I guess, the dream of the book, to both empower people, but also normalize the condition and make people understand the symptoms.
Well, I'll be sure to be supporting you on that, of course. And frankly, for me too, I had no idea. And I've been around the block a few more times than you. And so you would have thought that at the age of 40, I might have heard about it, but no. And first of all, there's this notion of identifying the symptoms, because you can sort of, oh, well, I had a hangover. You don't know what that is yet. But, I was feeling thirsty, and so I just drank. Oh, I'm going to the bathroom a couple more times than I usually do, but no big deal. Oh, I have to one button in my belt, but no big deal. And then it's sort of like the frog in water that's getting hotter and hotter. So what I'd talk the last piece about, which is the Kindle publication, because now I'm guessing you are also using KDP or Amazon's publishing arm for the book, but it's I've never done it, so I'd be curious to know the challenge of putting your drawings into the Kindle version, and how did that go? Were they finicky and pain in the butt as they were with me when I just do a Word document?
To be honest, yes, it was difficult. A lot of the process was, of course, there was writing the book and illustrating it, but the sort of unseen processes going through that Amazon KDP and self-publishing a book. And it makes it seem easy, but it is difficult figuring out the platform. So, I mean, even converting PDFs from Canva into Amazon KDP, and they want it as a certain, I think the file's like a MOBI file. And like, there's a lot of confusing aspects. And then it has to go through the days of sort of that Amazon has to check and see if it's appropriate or it fits the regulations. And then there's a new thing about, like, AI. You have to check if you use AI and how much you used it. So there's a lot of, I guess, like exactly what you said, super finicky details with the publishing site. But I mean, now that I've gone through it, I could see myself writing another book. I don't know. So I mean, yeah, it was difficult, but I guess I got it done, and it's live now. So yeah.
That's good. I'm excited for you, and I'm sure that'll be a very exciting moment to have your first copy in your hands in a hardback fashion. So just to finish then, Emmett, you're 17, you're a junior, which is second to last year at high school. What's the prospects for you going forward? What are you looking at? What do you want to do for the next, well, what's your next steps, we say?
Yeah, sorry, your microphone cut out. Could you repeat the question?
I'm sorry about that. So I was asking, you're 17 years old, and so you have 1.5 year or nearly a year and a bit left as you approach the aim of college, university. What are you looking at? What do you want to do? What's your next steps in life, Emmett?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess in the dream world, I wouldn't have to worry about school and I could write books all day, but that's definitely the reality. balancing my academics with these fun things I'm doing outside of school. So I mean, junior year is it's nearing the end of the school year. It's flown by, but it's been difficult. But I right now I'm thinking I'm not 100% sure. I haven't figured out like what I want to do in life, but I think I'm interested
Totally
in
normal.
yeah. I'm interested in I think the intersection between public policy and business because I'm someone who thinks that like businesses really have the power to change the world. Um, so I think that getting involved in business some way and not focusing so much on profits, but on like how I could help the community, kind of emblematic of I guess my book helping people out, but through a grander scale. I know that's vague, but that's something I'm interested in.
Hey, listen, it's a direction. I try to resist the temptation. Like, what's your passion, or what do you want it to be? Fire engine, fire, whatever it is, a firefighter. No, it's a whole process, and that is the journey. So, Emmett, been a great pleasure to have you on my show. I've enjoyed meeting you like this, I read your book, of course, and I'm delighted by your mom. She's absolutely stunningly bright and fast thinking, and geez, she's inspiring to me as well. So how can someone obviously get the book or get in touch with you should they wish? What would you like for people to act on at this point?
I mean, the most obvious answer is buy the book, of course. I think it's a cool read, even if you don't have the condition. Honestly, especially if you don't have the condition. I think that's just as important of an audience. So I think buying the book, telling people, you don't have to make your friends buy the book, but just telling people about the condition. Because a lot of people have it, and exactly you said, the symptoms are not obvious. It's not like one day you're this heavy, and then the next day you lose this much pound. It's very gradual, which makes it hard to notice. So, I mean, tell people about the condition, tell you about the symptoms, learn about the symptoms yourself, maybe by reading the book or elsewhere. But yeah, I think buying the book, ideally telling some friends to buy the book, and then maybe if you want to get the paperback when it comes out to give to kids, even without the condition, I guess that would be ideal. But the number one thing is just knowing the condition and making sure people around you are healthy by knowing the symptoms.
Presumably, you added in both the paperback, the hardcover anyway, and the Kindle that you can be bought by libraries as well, because you have to do a library pricing, right?
Yeah, I haven't gone into that exactly yet until I do the paperback. I think by the time this episode is launched, I think I will have the paperback out by then. So I'm looking to do that for April. But I haven't got into the library details, but that's definitely a goal of mine to see my book on a shelf. That would be really cool. But I
No
haven't looked
kidding.
into that yet. But big things like there's definitely me I think me publishing the book it's not the last step, it's the first step. There's a lot of cool things I could do with the book, whether it could be to like get into some schools nearby, like some public schools, or like some doctor's offices. There's a lot of things I'm interested in doing with the book.
As Seth Godin says, you need to create friction, and the friction for us is actually getting the word out afterwards. You've done all the hard work of writing it, but then it's not finished. Now you've got to go out and get it out. What about a personal site or social media? Are you active on social, and you'd like anyone to follow you or get in touch with you on social?
No, honestly, I think I'm good. But I mean, I have an Instagram, like a private account with my friends. But
Nah, totally
yeah,
cool.
but
I
I
was
mean,
just trying to
number
find
one
out.
thing, yeah, no problem. Number one thing is just check out the Amazon, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, whatever Amazon platform you are. Check out Drew Discovers Diabetes on Amazon. You'll see it with the cool, colorful cover, and hit that buy now, one click. You can check it out.
Love it. All right, Emmett, thanks a lot. Stay well, man. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.